Recording in progress.
I don't see you though. There we go. There we go. All right, I'm gonna unmute myself.
Thank you. So for anyone who is joining us late, we had a technical difficulty. Completely, I believe my error in the meeting ID on the agenda was wrong. Not quite sure how that happened, but we have members of the public who would like to give public comment today. And so it was very important that they be able to join us in one method or another. I'm gonna go.
Linda, I just joined and now there's only 4 people on this Zoom. Is the other Zoom going to link in together?
You have to.
You're muted too.
They'll be joining us in a minute.
Okay.
There's plenty of people there. We're just having some technical difficulties. So I just want to go ahead and see if I can't do my screen share again. So I had that all set up. Okay.
So Melinda, real quick, is it possible for you guys to just put the Zoom link on the agendas going forward?
Well, this is these are going to be the last of the Zoom meetings, so it's not going to be really an issue anymore. But this is the same way they do the Proposition K meetings and that they do the City Council meetings. Is that typically members of the public call in and are not provided panelist options.
Yeah, you don't have that. You actually don't have that set up on this call or this Zoom. But are you saying that it's not going to be a hybrid meeting going forward?
I think that they're still working out those fine details.
Okay.
But I think there is a desire to have hybrid meetings. I think just some of the functionality needs to be ironed out.
Okay, I hope you do, because I think it's a really good way for the public to make comment while they're at work.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay,
I agree.
Be quiet.
So we're just going to wait for the rest of the RVNOC members to join us so we can have quorum. I see Doug has joined us. Let's see. Jamie has joined us. Studio is back. Mason has joined us. Andrea's back. And Christina is back. And Lynn is back. Okay, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that gives us a quorum, Mr. Fitzsimmons, if you want to go ahead and kick us off. I have the agenda sharing here. Let's see. So just a brief overview of the agenda for those folks who are joining us. 1, please ignore the meeting ID number at the top. That was incorrect. So we will open with public comments. Given the technical difficulty that people had getting into the meeting, I don't know if you want to begin with public comments or hold and maybe do those slightly out of order. We did ask Kohaji to come back and represent on the Engine Company 23. Again, just as a reminder to the RVNOC folks, this
Can I help you?
the responsibilities between the regional oversight committee and the local oversight committee are different. So we actually don't. This body does not have purview over programming, but you're welcome to, of course, have opinions and make them known. That is not an issue, but you will not be voting on this item. And then lastly would be the vote on the BOE's recommended funding for the forthcoming
I'd rather have
program year.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So I don't have introductions on the agenda this time, but again, my name is Melinda Geyer. I'm the administrative analyst that deals with Proposition K. I'm joined by Alhaji Abdallah, the program manager with the Bureau of Engineering.
All right, terrific.
And I see that Sochi Ramirez with the City Legislative Analyst Office has joined us as well. And with that, Mr. Fitzsimmons, I can turn it over to you.
It looks like he has a note in the chat that he couldn't start his video or unmute.
Oh, I did not see the
He's
chat.
Oh no, I see him now, but okay.
Oh, I can't unmute. Wow, that's weird.
So tell him to check his audio on his actual PC or laptop. Sometimes that is all that needs to be unchecked.
So he is still muted here, it looks like.
Yeah, I can't. I can ask him to unmute, but I cannot unmute him. Well, Mr. Fitzsimmons, I don't know if you want to just have me go ahead and run through the agenda. We were happy to do that. I do know that there's a number of members of the public who will want to provide public comment today. So I was suggesting that perhaps we go ahead and start with the overview status of Engine Company 23 and then move to public comments after that. So if you want to go ahead and give us a yay or nay in the chat, we can move forward. Please do start public comments, all right? If there's any member of the public who would like to give public comment who is in the meeting with us, go ahead and raise your hand. If you're calling in on the line, please hit *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute when you're asked to do so. And that way, everyone who raises their hand will come to the top of the list and we can take them in order. Laura, did you want to go ahead and provide public comment? Or Catherine?
Sure, I'll just, for me, I think it would behoove everybody to have this be a little bit more of a transparent process. It's been really difficult for me personally to find your agendas. Obviously, today's meeting didn't work, and I would highly encourage the committee to make sure that they're stuff works before they send the agendas out. I'm sure that this is uncomfortable, so I apologize, but it's important. It's a really important topic to the community, and I encourage you all to make sure that the next meeting is hybrid versus only in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Catherine, did you want to also provide public comment at this time? If so, you'll need to take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, actually, all the public comment that I had, I pretty much got in. So I'll be looking forward to hearing the update on Engine Company 23 and sharing it with my community. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other members of the public with us, but we can always hold public comment open in case someone does join us later. But with that, Ohaji, I want to go ahead and turn it over to you for the Engine Company update.
Thank you all for chiming in today. And really, much of this is sort of repetitive in terms of what's been presented to you in the past. I know that there were several members of the community who were not able to make it to the last meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that we provided that same level of presentation and update for the entire project to everyone in the community. So this first page is obviously our beloved Engine Company 23, an unreinforced masonry building with beautiful historical architectural elements from the interior through the exterior. Next slide, please. Some additional imagery of the interior, the historical tile, as well as detailed ceiling work. Next slide, please. The upper floors, once sort of captain's offices and places for living spaces for the firemen. As you can see, the really beautiful, detailed, ornate architectural molding around the fireplace, etc. And these elements make it, obviously it's beautiful. It's outstanding that we want to retain as much of this as possible, but it does make it challenging to install the structural frame within the interior of this building while we're taking down, salvaging, numbering each element and documenting its placement to make sure that it can be put back in place. Next slide, please. Another photo of the first floor, these large spaces, which we've currently programmed tentatively as exhibition space. Next slide, please. But it really accentuates, obviously, the narrowness of this site, which offers some restrictions, but also offers some good opportunities in terms of its rehabilitation. Next slide, please. So I went through our construction documents a bit, just to try to pull out some information to kind of help the community understand just how intense this first phase of construction is. As you can see from this diagram, the first floor is programmed to essentially be the entrance area and lobby, as well as exhibition space. The second floor holds, I believe, three usable classrooms and an office space that can also be utilized as a computer lab or office space. The third floor is also additional classrooms are currently programmed to happen in these areas, as well as storage, additional office space, and support spaces. So those are the three major activities. Obviously, this is a youth arts center, so our focus is on having as many multi-purpose spaces as possible that will allow for a variety of different art programming, whether it be digital media art or painting, molding, clay, etc. Next slide, please. So this image is a big stoic. So what it represents is the structural steel frames, massive structural steel frames that are being inset inside those spaces that we just looked at. The massive foundations, as you can see at the bottom, and the structural steel as it goes upwards into the third floor. Next slide, please. And that's in its narrow space. Very similar, different frames that happen throughout different portions of the building. But this is essentially what this building requires is to build a structural steel frame on the inside of it to support all of the unreinforced masonry. Next slide, please. A view of that similar frame, and so this is kind of like fun. Where's Waldo? It's like, how can you find this structural steel frame embed throughout all the architectural elements? And that's just to help everyone understand just how intricate and ornate this is in stitching these pieces together. Next slide, please. Once again, some sections of the building with the architectural elements that really, once again, just sort of show you how we're having to bring these spaces together in all of the different systems. Next slide, please. I hope I'm not overwhelming you all with this. Again, a section of the building that indicates the new elevator shaft going in, new structural steel, the rehabilitation of the partitions, etc. Next slide, please. And so these are some of the architectural treatments that were presented to the community in the past as well, that are being considered. Obviously, this is a historical space, so any new partitions and new elements really need to be, they need to call themselves out as new, is the appropriate preservation treatment. So one of the concepts, obviously, is it's diving in and intertwining this modern approach with the historical elements there. This is a printed glass approach, whereas the graphics would represent important elements and timelines in the downtown history. That would then be printed on glass and then used to create different areas throughout the first floor. Next slide, please. There's just some other images of those, whereas once again, we're retaining all of the historic fabric along the walls and the ceiling, but providing a modern approach that begins to carve out spaces for whether it be presentation or the entry portico itself. Next slide, please. This is a brick pattern, once again, over printed glass, but really harks back to the original construction, obviously, and for the building's original construction. Excuse me. Next slide, please. And the reverse view. And some of these phase 2 elements are still obviously yet to have their design finalized. And that'll be done in conjunction with the community's input in the next phase. Next slide, please. And so this is a sort of plaster approach, which is often used to, once again, retain the historical fabric, but dial in new contemporary elements that hide all the infrastructure while still utilizing those to call out and identify spaces in an open plan approach. Next slide, please. That may be it.
And I think that's it.
That is it. Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
If anyone has any questions regarding this project or anything that Haji just described, go ahead and raise your hand so we can have a conversation. Except for, Doug, who apparently does not have audio today. Feel free to use the chat as well, if that's more comfortable for anybody. No questions? Lynn?
I just wanted to say that I think the printed glass is beautiful.
Agreed. And I think I think everyone really likes the printed glass because it gives you so much flexibility, right? And in dialing in the history. It'll all come down to money at the end of the day to make sure we have the money for it. Absolutely. Thank you for your comment.
Laura, did you want to provide public comments on the presentation?
I just had a question. So where are you in this actual build out of this particular phase of the project, and when do you expect it to be completed?
So the project has, as all unreinforced masonry historical buildings that I've ever seen or worked on, has suffered some delays. That project was supposed to be completed, the first phase, in the next fiscal year. And I have doubts that, knowing the issues that it's currently dealing with, I doubt that it'll be complete. It'll be completed within the next fiscal year, not within this calendar year. So I think phase one should be wrapping up around June of 2024.
So have you started the build out already then?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry, apologies if I didn't say that. Yes, the construction for phase one has been underway for well over a year at this point.
Okay.
And we're about, I would say, 50 to 60% complete.
And this is not a bidding issue, correct?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not an issue with bidding. And as a matter of fact, just the contractor who bid on this work bid on it so long ago, and due to the progress moving slowly, they've even asked for some leniency to cover the cost of materials escalation, which we are not entertaining because they bid the project and we're holding them responsible for it. But the structural steel elements, for example, they had to make sure that they bought those materials in advance of the major escalation increase that we've been suffering.
The Prop K money is going to expire next year. Is that correct? How are you guys going to supplement that, or I'm assuming something's in the works to re-up that, or?
Well, the Prop K funding is not expiring next year. The program itself expires in 2026, and at that point, we can't add any new Prop K money to the project. But for example, you can't recalculate gap and inflation money based on where the project is and apply additional Prop K money. But regardless, the project gap, budget gap is, will be well above, as it is now, well above and beyond what Prop K can provide to complete phase two. So we will be seeking additional funding sources, which we're already doing through the city's budget cycle.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, if there are no additional questions,
It looks like something just popped up in the chat.
let's take a look. Have we identified partner agencies to lead programming for this project? The answer to that is not yet. It is anticipated that a request for proposals would go out timely to be processed upon the completion of the rehabilitation work. So that is a timing issue, but no, that we haven't started that yet because we were still several years out, at least to fully complete phase two and have it ready to be open to the public. Is that about right, Ohaji?
Yes, that is exact.
This is Doug. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. I apologize for my technical issues. So clearly the public has a lot of concern about this project still and feedback on how it should proceed. What's the most constructive way for them to talk to the city about their concerns and be heard on this issue?
They are going to reconvene the RVNOC for this project, and those meetings will all be held in person because they'll be past March, and the public will be very welcome to participate.
Will they also be Zoom transmitted as well, hybrid?
I don't know.
But if so, we will make sure that the information is placed on the agenda if possible.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I know, just in general, this is kind of the conversation around the neighborhood council system and all this other stuff that just getting the meetings hybrid and easily accessible is still wanted by the community. So anything we can do to get that to happen would be great in addition to the in-person component.
Yeah. And that may be a little easier for us to navigate at the RVNOC level, as that's kind of up to us and our program managers.
Great.
Do we have other questions or comments on this item? Okay, I think we can move on to our third item, which is discussion and action on the specified projects.
So this is the same presentation that we shared last week. So I don't know if you just as a quick refresher course, I'm just going to move this slightly so I can access my controls here. There we go. So these are all of the remaining specified projects that are in the central region. Ohaji did a great overview of them last week, along with the recommended funding for the upcoming program year, which is highlighted in orange, and the subsequent years to the end of the program. As we noted, many of these have received their full allotment of Prop K dollars, so we're still looking to work that out. And they are recommending commencing design with $200,000 for the Highland Park Junior Arts Center project in this coming year. Does anyone have any questions about the project status, or any other thoughts or concerns that you would like to raise? This is I think kind of the time for your own deliberations.
Do any board members have questions?
This may have been discussed last week, but I just kind of want to confirm. A lot of the shortfalls on these projects have been reduced, it sounds like, if they've made it to this point, just from my past experience, like with how funding's kind of been allocated when the shortfalls are really large. That's my impression, that the shortfalls are much closer to being overcome for these projects.
Well, I think in specific for some of the, as you said, the remaining projects, right? So for the Boyle Heights Sports Center, the overall project budget shortfall has not been significantly reduced just yet, and it won't be, based on what the community wants, what a gym costs these days, that meets our typical gym standards. So we're having to do more finding money versus trying to value engineer out elements of the project that the community needs, not just wants, but that are key project elements. So I would say in general, for the remaining projects, the project budget gaps have not reduced, right? As we move forward, the cost of construction is just increasing. Yeah. So, in hindsight, as we're seeing on a lot of projects, Prop K and non-Prop K projects, when we hold off on, let's say we complete design and then we hold off on awarding the project due to a budget gap, that budget gap only increases, despite our efforts to value engineer elements out to bring in the overall project budget.
That makes sense.
And of course, we're not seeing the full project budget for all of these items. We're just seeing the Prop K money allocated against it.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Lynn, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm unclear on what you're asking us to do. If the funding authority and the funds are here, but I just heard you say that this doesn't include updated budgets.
So this oversight body is specifically asked to make recommendations for the Proposition K dollars allocation annually. There are other grant funds, general fund funds, other monies that have come into these projects as we can kind of piece those pieces together. So no, this is not like a full project by project reconciliation, because the oversight body is specific to the Proposition K ballot measure.
But I guess that's what I'm struggling with. Like, it's hard to know whether we should approve a project if we don't know if it's fully funded or how much higher the current cost estimate is.
I think that if these are all specified projects. So again, when the voters almost 26 years ago passed Proposition K, there were 183 projects that were identified with I would say Oversight Sports Center and then dash construct gymnasium, like the very specific locations and improvements to be done. We've been advised by the city attorney that the city is mandated to complete all of those specified projects. Otherwise, we run the risk of lawsuits or having to pay money back, or there'd be some kind of like reconciliation issue that we don't want to have to deal with. So it's not a matter of approving the projects. The projects were already approved by the voters. The issue at hand is simply the assigning of money for the upcoming fiscal year, and so BOE has made their recommendations based on the various statuses of these projects and which ones actually still have capacity for pay dollars.
And one of the things I've said in like years past on these meetings is if we don't allocate the funds, it's not going to help the shortfall. So if there is a shortfall to the project, then it absolutely needs to have funds allocated to it, especially if given the repercussions of not doing so and not having the projects completed.
I'll say that this was a much more involved process in previous years when we had a lot of different projects in process and we were moving money from project to project, reallocating based on delays and other issues. Here in the last few years of the program, when almost every project has been more or less completed, it's pretty simple, or much easier task than it has been.
Margarita, do you have a question?
I do. I've been aware as a community member of this project, and it's just been on hold for such a very long time. I know that, when Councilman Weezer was the council member at that time, I was part of the committee to kind of start engaging in this conversation over the gymnasium. And then I guess one of my biggest concerns is with the recs and parks and how there's just no communication in regards to the statuses on projects when it comes to, what's happening. The last conversation I know they had with us was that, funds can be used if they had to, obviously the priority, there's a major disaster, then funds can be utilized for that. I don't know if that's even correct to say, but that's what was told to us. But I think one thing that I would like to see is, updates to where the projects are. Because again, I was part of that committee that the council members selected a group of community members to oversee that project. And we never saw anything. Recs and Parks is one of the departments with the worst, communication with community. And so I'd like to see that, improve, especially because you're talking about a lot of money. And it's, the gymnasium is long overdue. I know the community really needs it. And so that's just what I wanted to share.
And you're referring to the Boyle Heights Sports Center, right?
Yes.
Correct.
No.
Yes.
Margarita, were you able to attend our meeting where we did do a brief update on that project?
I did. Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure you saw that and heard the struggles there. Clearly, we moved forward with design. We got to a point, we presented it to the community per our RVNOC process, and we dialed in a lot of the community's concerns.
Right.
And our scope crept to be much larger than what we could afford. Mm-hmm. And so that's been Recreation and Parks struggle in the council office, and working with the council office to dial back in the scope to what's really needed, and then come back to the community with a revised design that essentially removes some of the bells and whistles. From a programming standpoint, I think there were some additional community rooms the community asked for. It ended up pushing us into a subterranean level, essentially, and costs just kind of ballooned from there. It's already very bad soil. in this particular area. So that's one of the areas where the cost balloon. We've met with the architect, sketched up several different ideas on building placement to bring that project budget down a bit, and to change the way we excavate for that project, in hopes to bring the project budget down by several $1 million. But in order to do so, we're going to have to cut programming to do so. So we'll be coming back to the community at an RVNOC level to present a revised design within this next fiscal year, before the end of the calendar year.
Thank you for the update.
Got it. And Lynn, I don't know if we answered your question clearly, but I just wanted to chime in again that what this body is being asked to do is to approve the funding that's noted in orange, and the only project that's noted to receive additional allocation of Prop K funding, and it's not an additional amount of Prop K funding. It's the amount of Prop K funding that was already approved for it, and then we've been spreading it out over the years as designed, and the project moves forward. So what we're now saying is let's utilize additional $200,000 of the 1.8 that we originally had, put it into this fiscal year's budget, and make sure that we're using that to restart this design process and get us to the finish line.
So, Haji, thank you for that explanation. I guess what I'm wondering is why aren't there plans for every single one of these projects, since they've been voted in and they have to be done? We only have 4 years left in Prop K money. I don't understand why all this is blank.
So if you see, it says Prop K funds years 1 through 25. Right? So many of the projects, even though they're ongoing, they've already received their full allocation, right? So the Robertson Rec Center, for example, that's in closeout, but it's already received its full allocation. And that could have happened for any number of the projects for any number of reasons. Could have already drawn down its full allocation to the project. Engine Company 23, for example, we're in phase 1 construction, but we've already drawn down the use of all of those funds. Highland Park, number one, we don't utilize Prop K holistically for design costs because there's a payback required if the project doesn't move forward, right? So for Highland Park, design was stopped because once again, we ran into a design that was, and a design approach for that project that was well above the project budget and even the additional funding we were seeking for that project. So we halted design, regrouped, have come up with another approach to move it forward, and that's why we're now saying, okay, let's put some more money back into this next fiscal year. Now, what that doesn't mean, which it may insinuate, but it doesn't mean that we've spent all of the previous allocation. The $895,000, for example, we haven't spent all of that money. It just means that we allocated, we pulled it from the larger Prop K cash of funds for this particular project into an account that we can use.
So then, I guess if there are projects that are, none of these are complete, although some of them have had their full allocation given to them. Is that true?
No. For example, the Robertson Rec Center is a completed project. Now.
So then why is that up here and not in that list down that other attachment of completed projects?
So this one, it's in the final closeout phase, but the building is open. It's being utilized by Recreation and Parks for almost a year now at this point.
So there's an administrative closeout that we have to make sure that all the invoices have been paid, that the project is fully reconciled. And once we have that administrative portion done, then the project will move down. That is correct.
So I think, as a committee member, it would be really helpful to me to have an additional column with comments such as that on it, because I just really don't know what I'm looking at here. And so if that Robertson Recreation Center is almost complete, then that's helpful to know. And I have no idea on the other ones. Is it similar?
Yes, Poinsettia is that one is also completed and just needs to be closed out. And I believe Hazard is also completed and just is waiting final closeout. Is that correct?
Poinsettia, we did an infeasibility study, as you noted. So that has technically been closed out. But the funds, we left it there because there's still remaining funds, and we want to push those to future fiscal years and reprogram as approved by the Prop K Steering Committee when we get to that point, as we look at projects that need funds, et cetera. But most of the projects, and Lynn, in our very first presentation, that spreadsheet that was provided, I believe it did have a comments row, whereas I went through the comments for every project, whether it was completed or continuing, and gave updates on each one. But duly noted, we'll follow up, as we have our final meeting, we'll make sure we have that comments section that sort of restates what we've gone over before.
This is the final meeting.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
but I appreciate these comments too, because we're in the next cycle. It's going to be more complicated because we will be having the competitive cycle. So this is probably the simplest that, as Doug mentioned, that he's probably ever seen this process, just because it is limited to specified projects, which were mandated to get done, and it's simply a matter of spreading the funding and moving forward.
Yeah.
Other questions? I'm going to call for a brief public comment on this item.
Sure.
Do you have any hands raised? Okay. Would somebody like to move the approval of this spreadsheet forward?
I'll move it.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further board debate on this item now that it's open? Okay, I think we're ready to take a vote. Could I get...
Do you want me to call roll?
Sorry?
Would you like me?
Yeah, I don't have a roll, so yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to go in order of council. The council district, Christina Cabrera.
Yes.
Thank you. Jose Miguel.
Aye.
Thank you. Suju.
Yes.
Andrea.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes.
Mason.
Yes.
And Jamie.
Yes.
Oh, did I miss Gary?
I don't think you called my name.
Yeah, what's happening?
Oh, I didn't. I'm so sorry. Margarita?
Yes.
And I did miss Gary.
Gary's present.
Is Gary voting yes?
Yes.
And I believe that makes us fully attended and unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all. That concludes our duties for this session. And we can adjourn until the, I believe, the fall. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait, before we adjourn, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at this. This is just a comment for how you run this meeting, I guess in the fall maybe. The agenda was discussion and possible action on specified projects, and I don't feel like we discussed possible action at all. I feel like all we did was approve money that's already been allocated to project.
That is the action.
So
I think it's they use the word possible in case there's not a quorum. because the board cannot take an action unless there's a quorum. So it's just kind of a language that we could still talk about it, even if we didn't have enough people here.
So it was really
Nobody
just,
moves to do the approval, then there's that too.
so it was really discussion and approval of allocated money. That's what we were doing.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there another action that you would like to discuss, or if you have any other questions, we're happy to hear them.
Yeah, I don't know. I found it very difficult to take that vote because I really didn't know what, I felt like I was rubber stamping something, and that's fine because this is a 3-week, process is really all you could do. But I don't know, I was a little uncomfortable personally.
Understood. And that certainly wasn't the intention. We'll certainly look at how we can make that more clear, because essentially, as you said, right, the funds were already approved, right, per the ballot measure, et cetera. And so what we needed to be clear on is that you're approving the allocation of previously approved funds and when those funds get allocated to the project, right? So as you said, many of those projects have already had many of their full allotments, but several had not. And that's what you're approving is the allocation of their remaining funds over the next year based on their individual statuses, right? The next year will be, as Melinda noted, it will be a bit more detailed, and we'll try to make that very, very clear in the packages that we send out to you guys that that's really the action that you're taking, and give you some detailed project status updates for those projects in advance.
Yeah, thanks, Ohaji. And I think just to make my point a little bit clearer or amplified, it's like if there's a project where say it has $500,000 left and it's not going to get to that money, I thought we would have a discussion and say, let's take that money and give it to another project, which will be able to use it, is very close to completion. And so I don't have any information on the projects that we voted for in terms of, is this one at 60% completion and that one's at 90%? There wasn't enough granularity for me I thought we would be making trade-offs, I guess. And
gotcha.
At least this year we didn't. So, but anyway, thank you for listening.
Yeah. I also relate to what you're saying because I said this a few years ago on my first time that I was on this board. And, that's kind of what informed the question about the shortfalls that I asked earlier, because I know that they all have shortfalls. But, and that's why we're here, because we're trying to allocate the funding. It's really challenging. So I totally resonate with what you're saying. So
thanks, Jamie.
And in the past, I'm sure when there was a lot more Prop K funds remaining, that they were leveraging funds and moving a lot more money from project to project to leverage other additional funds to get projects completed. And as Melinda and I have realized that we are in the golden sunset of this program. And so there's not as much leveraging that we can do to help out other projects. We're largely having to depend on other funding sources to meet funding gaps. But in the next meeting, I'm sure we're going to have some additional projects that are going to be in crunch mode, where we might be able to present some information to possibly do some of that swapping.
Thanks, Ohaji.
You got it. No, thank you, Lynn.
Other board comment? Okay. I'd like to propose that we adjourn for this session. And thank you all for your service. Any objection to us adjourning today's meeting? And again, this will be the last of the session.
Okay, sorry, just one last question. Procedural. If we want to serve again in October, do we contact Melinda, our council district office?
You would contact You would contact your council office. They technically it's the council office that does the nominations. But if you do want to serve, then they're always looking for people that are willing. So I would just let them know that it's something that you'd be interested in doing.
Okay, thanks.
Next time should be a little bit more fun.
And question about when, assuming we're here in the fall, these will be face-to-face meetings in the fall?
They are, let us hope that nothing prevents that from that happening.
Right.
We're the city is discontinuing its current policy at the end of February. So this is kind of like the last set of meetings that we get to do fully remotely, and we're in discussions on how we can effectively do some kind of a hybrid option that would allow for at least the public to call in and provide comments. But the city attorney, the last I heard, was advising that bodies that are subject to the Brown Act would have to have a minimum of a quorum in person, is what I understood him to say. But I think we're going to work through those details as we navigate kind of the new reality.
Okay, and then those meetings, when they are in person, will be held at City Hall or some other location?
I believe in the past they've been held at City Hall for the Central Region.
Occasionally, but we tried to move it around.
Okay.
So we had meetings at various parks, rec centers.
Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's any objection, I'm going to adjourn the meeting for today.